Hey, thanks for joining me in the garden today. Hope you stick around. We're going to learn about clover. We're going to see where it all began for me. And if you stick around to the end, first sighting in my garden of a special bug. Morning. I'll be in the garden today. We've got a special task to do, one that I do about every couple weeks. First, we got to get some tools. So we'll be working in this patch today. This clover is purposeful. And I guess I can tell you a little bit about why I'm out here with this clover and doing this stuff. My gardening journey began about 4 years ago. I really had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to have a garden. And I built these beds. Originally, these beds were 1 2x4 high. And actually, before I even built the beds, I got the tiller out and we ended up tilling these spots. It was just native prairie and it was full of buffalo grass and various weeds. I'll take a shot of the prairie that we started with, and so that was the starting point, is just a basically prairie. Well, that prairie posed challenges, the buffalo grass especially, and that buffalo grass, very persistent, wanted to keep coming back, and along with all the other weeds that were in the garden. And it was probably the end of the second year that I done some research online and discovered this idea of cover crop. And so I did that at the end of, I think it was probably my second year. I bought some cover crop mix. It had a variety of things in it, blue clover. It had a particular kind of clover, red clover, which is not what is here. It really was not an ideal. I guess it's good for a cover crop, but it ended up not dying at the end of the year, and so I've had to deal with red clover ever since. I think I'm mostly on the winning side of that, but red clover is 3 to 4. It can grow 3 to 4 foot tall. You leave it undone or leave it unchecked. In any case, it was the cover crop that got me thinking about using clover as a living mulch. And that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm using the clover that I'm picking as a mulch. And so what this has produced is a chore similar to weeding, although much more enjoyable than weeding. But it does need to be done on a pretty frequent basis because of the way it grows. And I'll show you what's underneath this clover. In any case, I come out here probably every 2 to 3 weeks, maybe once a month, just as I see the need for it. And I just tear the clover out, and I don't let it go to waste. I try not to throw anything away. Another garden lesson is use everything. But I tear it out of the beds, and I use it to create a mulch layer in this other bed, which for the most part I've laid fallow this year. Every year I'm going to try to rotate one of these plots to allow it to go fallow, to rest. Biblical concept, to rest, just as we have one day built into the week for our rest, so God would also have us give rest to the land. And lots of benefit to allowing a piece of land to sit and to not have cultivation. Let it do its thing, let it rest. And so that's what I do. I'm going to let it rest, because we have one day built into the week, our rest, so God would also have us give rest to the land. And lots of benefit to allowing a piece of land to sit, to not have cultivation. Let it do its thing, let it rest. And so that's what I do. I'm going to let it rest. What this allows us to do is allows plants to grow with protection of this mulch layer. These cabbages are sort of nestled down in here, and they benefit from moisture, protection from the sun and the bugs. I'll take you over here and we'll look at the quality of the coverage and the dirt underneath here. One of the qualities of clover, it's not the only plant that has clover, but it is a good one for this, is it's a nitrogen fixer, which means as a plant, the root system supports and introduces back into the soil nitrogen. And nitrogen is one of those good things we want in our soil and in our garden. A lot of what fertilizer is. And so in a real helpful way, clover is providing us nitrogen back into the soil. But the beneficial aspects that I have found with clover is all of this biomass. I'll bring you over here and show you what I'm doing with it. Tossing it over here in the next field, but this is definitely not going to waste. And talk about a wonderful trade-off. You're going to have to pick weeds. You might as well be out here picking clover, because it's something that you can use, and it provides benefit beyond the cover and the water retention and the cooling of the soil. It provides nutrient for next year. And so that's, I guess, a good place to talk about what I've planned here with my style of raised garden bed. It's not much of a raised bed right now. It until this last year, was only 1 2x4 high. And this year I added a second layer to the bed. And my plan ultimately, as I considered investing in a bed, a traditional looking raised bed, 2 or 3 foot tall metal galvanized frame. A lot of downsides that I wanted to find a way around. And the first one is the initial investment. I wasn't immediately aware of whether I would be doing this every year or not. And thought, well, I don't want to put out a bunch of money to find out, wow, I really hate this. I don't want to do it anymore. And so I, in a sense, went the cheap route. Got some 2x4s and filled the ground and put them in there and started adding to the soil, because I really immediately realized our soil was not in a great way. And so I those 2x4s down and filled it up, and then added a whole bunch of nutrients and stuff back into the soil, mainly to break down the hard clay that we have here. And so this hard clay is part of the story why I went this way. The hard clay had to be broken down. And you can do that in one of 2 ways. You can do it breaking your back, and I did some of that, filling it, digging it up, using a broad fork, which I don't have and I never did use, but I do want to get. But so there's that hard way, and this is another way. Create a situation where the plants themselves and the roots break up the soil for you. And there's not much better option than to have a root system like clover puts in go into the ground and penetrate it and put into it all the life that lives in the root system. Phenomenal roots. Show you what the soil looks like underneath this clover, but it provided that it's a slower way to build soil health, but I think it's ultimately a better way long term. Plus, as I've done this last year, I've added another layer to the garden bed, and this next year we'll see how well it fills up. But that was the other deciding factor, was when you start out with a gigantic metal bin, then you got to put topsoil in it, you got to fill it. What do you fill it with? Well, I didn't have any big logs, I didn't have a lot of biomass to put in it. I would have had to get dirt, and straight old dirt is not good garden dirt. I wasn't going to invest in thousands of bags of garden dirt. So moral of the story is I went this slow route, But I think over time and ultimately, slow route has proven to be a beneficial route. So what I have now with clover growing is an opportunity every week to take the produce of it and to put it back in to the bed. And so that's what I'm doing each and every time I harvest this. So this bed here is a mixture of what I've been putting here today, and also this couple weeks old. It's old, dried out, starting to fall apart clover. And as I dig in here underneath it, I've got layers and layers of good soil. I've got a wonderful soil that I didn't have 2-3 years ago. It didn't happen overnight though. It happened in time. And that's partly why in one of my other videos about patience, gardening has taught me patience. The process take its time because we're not in a race. Gardening is not a race. It is a marathon. And every year you learn on it differently. I learned in our 3rd year in, my 2nd year in, overcome that. And so for me, clover has been an absolute game changer, and it benefits in so many ways that I can't see not using it from here on out. Now, this is the garden bed that I was talking about, and it's 2 levels now. This next year, if I've got enough biomass to keep adding to this, I will add a layer. I may go every other year. This year, I'm 3.5 inches taller, and as you can see, I'm getting to the point where as all this breaks down and becomes the nutrient base for next year, I'm building up. Pretty soon I'll have what would look like a traditional garden bed. I recommend this if you're starting out and you don't want to invest like I want to invest in the amount of money up front. You know, with 4 and full screws, you can get started. Yeah, these will deteriorate over time, but I can tell you right now, 4 years in, that bottom 2x4 is still in really good shape. Now, I live in a very dry and arid climate, so the only moisture that we get is minimal, and then the sun dries it out, but the 2x4s have done well. So we're moving to this next bed and doing the exact same thing. This is the bed that I've laid fallow for this year. The only exception is I've got one little part here that's got some cucumbers in it. I had clover actually going before I planted them, and I planted them from seed. So in a time of about a week or 2, clover is going to overtake that poor little seedling and it'll shade it out. So I used the weed fabric to give the poor little plants a fighting chance. And once they got up above this clover level, I could let the clover run wild. And so now I've got clover that comes and grows up in between the different parts of the plant, and I just let it be. Lessons I've learned with clover is when you plant your plants, you're initially starting out and this thing's only 2 inches tall, you have to stake it, because in a matter of weeks, that 2-inch plant will only grow maybe 3 inches tall, but the clover will grow 4, 5, 6 inches tall, and you'll lose your plant in there. And so staking your plants so that you can find them and know where you're yanking out clover, not to yank out your plants with it, is an important step. It's an additional step. Use stakes like that in your garden. But ultimately, you're going to get a lot of benefit from clover. Clover that I used, I just got off Amazon. You can probably get it all over the place. I just noticed this. I guess it's a praying mantis. I don't know. First time I've seen one out here. Maybe he's been here before, but that's cool to see. And then you got this critter. That critter. Not cool to see. Maybe diatomaceous earthing them. Although I probably won't. It doesn't look like they're doing much to damage anything. That praying mantis may do the job for me. That's cool to see that. I haven't mentioned it, and we don't have a problem with rabbits. On occasion, we'll get an occasional rabbit, and they can do a lot of damage in your garden. Well, rabbits love clover. And so if you've got clover they're much more likely to eat that clover than they are everything else. And that's what we found, is that they love clover. They come in and they'll eat the clover, and they'll be standing right next to your cucumbers, your broccoli, your tomatoes, your beans, and they don't touch those things. They love the clover. What's the moral of the story? Well, for me, I think the moral is use clover. I'm fascinated by it. Its many properties, all the good that comes from it.